Welcome to Make It a Great One with Dr. Dan. I'm Dan Peters, psychologist and executive coach. This show is all about bringing hope, connection, awareness, and wisdom through meaningful conversations that inspire us to become better versions of ourselves and make a positive impact on humanity. This is your space to pause, reflect, and reconnect with who you are, what you care about, and who you want to be. We have this moment, this day, and this life. Let's make it a great one. Today's show is Courage, Giraffes, and Heroes with Ann Medlock. Ann is a writer, editor, activist, publicist, speaker, actor, speechwriter, teacher, award-winning public radio commentator, and social entrepreneur. Her background includes editing Vietnam Press in Saigon and teaching in Japan and the Congo. In the US, she's written articles for major publications, including the New York Times, counseled major corporations on using media, developed classroom curricula, and edited the Children's Express news service. She also wrote speeches for US political figures and for the Aga Khan. In 1982, concerned that too few people were participating in public life, she launched the Giraffe Heroes Project to inspire people to stick their necks out for the common good and give them tools to succeed. The nonprofit has since honored almost 2,000 giraffes and told their stories in every medium that's become available over the decades. Ann was named an education innovator by the National Education Association for her pioneering work on the Giraffe Heroes materials for classrooms. She also won the Caring Institute's Caring Award and has been honored by the Community Action Network, the Northwest International Women's Conference, and the American Creativity Association. Ann has given talks on courage all across the US and in China, Switzerland, Mexico, Singapore, and Russia. Her books include her fictional memoir, Silence of the Sea Maid and Outing of the Mermaid, and her book poetry, Arias, Riffs, and Whispers, was beautifully endorsed by Gloria Steinam. Ann lives with writer and Giraffe Project co-leader John Graham on an island in the Pacific Northwest where she's spending her days writing at least 2 more books, Building with Christopher Alexander, and Breadcrumbs, a memoirish guide to a meaningful life, which I believe is just finished. And of course, there's more stories of giraffe heroes. Ann, welcome to the show.
I am so pleased. That sounds interesting.
Don't you sound interesting?
I do.
And that's me cutting a whole bunch of stuff out, as you know. And I went through it and I went through it. And I'm like, people need to hear what you have done in your life. You are 92 years old.
No, not till May.
Oh, not till May. Okay.
I'm only 91.
You're only 91. You are a few months shy of 92. And here's how I'm going to set this up. You founded Giraffe Heroes at age 50. You wrote your poetry book at 70, your first novel at 80, your fictional memoir at 90, and both of the 2 memoirs and memoir-ishes are happening right now. And so you basically said, I'm busting up this idea of what it means to be old because your experience is quite different from seemingly the norm.
No, why quit? I mean, it's not ditch digging. I'm just sitting here writing. How hard is that?
It's flow. It's just flow.
Yeah. And making sure I get it all down, that's my big goal. I have these memento mori things around. Behind me, there are little raku urns that a potter and I worked out. How many do you need for 6 people to have urns of ashes? And we worked out the volumes, and she made little urns for me with symbols from my life all over them. They're little works of art. And I have them right behind me on the windowsill. So I remember, you don't have all the time in the world. Don't waste time.
And the energy. Does your energy just stay up when you're engaged in your meaningful activity?
Oh, no, I'm probably buzzed all the time. So.
This is just part of who you are?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just curious and interested, and there's so much to do and see and learn. And I keep ordering books. I have so many books in the to read pile. I need to live another 100 years.
Hmm. Hmm. So live well, and this is interesting. Live as you are never going to die and live as you are going to die.
Tomorrow.
Hmm.
Yeah. Do it. Do all of that at once.
All at once. Um, did you ever have, or do you fear what comes after?
Fear. No, because I think if anybody goes to breadcrumbs, you'll see some discussion of that uh, question of what comes next,
Yes.
which I find fascinating because it's the reason for almost every religion to exist is to
Mm-hmm.
tell you you'll never not be.
Mm-hmm.
There will
Mm-hmm.
always be a you somehow. Um,
Yes,
so that's a very nice idea, and it keeps us from freaking out.
it
Oh,
does.
but
It does.
my made up story about what happens next is I think I've been taking dictation for decades. I hear things and I write them down.
Mm-hmm.
So I've decided there's a muse squad. There are these muses who used to be writers. And what's left of them is not them as individuals, but it's them as what they know about words and language and beat and sound and rhymes. And if you sit down and begin to write, they'll come help you. They will
Mm-hmm.
talk to you and you can write down what they say. So I'm joining the Muse Squad. That's my story.
That's what you're going to be doing is join the
Yeah,
Muse
that's my
Squad.
story.
I That actually reminds me of something that I wrote from your writing. What quoting you in what you're working on in your book about Christopher Alexander. You wrote,
Mm,
"My writing became listening to the words in my head that won't shut up, considering the images that won't stop appearing. Those are my givens. In the realm of life decisions, I take in what's coming at me and do my best to welcome it. Making it up day after day means fully engaged, awake, and observant, aka alive. The
mhm.
life you create from millions of such moments is vivid and exciting,
Yeah,
just as the house Chris built for us is
yeah.
resoundingly alive."
It's that old a trope about be here now.
Hmm.
You know?
Ram Daas.
That's it, or as his daddy called him, Rumdum.
Rumdum.
I'm so old, I knew the
Yeah.
guy. We were friends.
Wow. Wow. I do think the idea of how we continue is really important. I mean,
Mhm,
everyone has different beliefs about this. I know that I was petrified of death. I had a childhood
mhm.
petrified of death, and it went on for a very long time. I mean, I
Uh-huh.
even think intermittently in college because I remember even in graduate school, I was reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I was reading
Mm,
Kubler-Ross on death and dying, and
mhm,
I was searching and searching, trying to understand. And for me, um, I had this epiphany one night, which sounds so simple, is I said, if every human being that has ever existed has had to contend with the idea of existing and dying,
mhm,
I can too. And
mhm.
that's before I even explored into more of the spiritual realms and really
It's
had
good.
it evolved. But it's like it's real for a lot of people, the
Yeah.
idea of impermanence and then how it can get in the way of like how do we make it enhance our life, the
Yeah.
idea of we're only here for so long with in this time with these people, how do I make
Mhm,
the most of it and not be
mhm.
afraid of it slipping away?
I have a shelf of books on death that long.
Hmm.
I did the same thing you did. I just went looking for everybody who's ever had an idea about this. What do people say? And the one thing that really stuck with me from all those books was Marcus Aurelius,
Hmm.
because he said, Lord knows what he actually said writing in Greek, but the translation I read said, you only lose the moment you're in when you die because you've completed the past and the future does not exist. So all you're losing is that moment. I started laughing and I couldn't stop. That really, really helped me.
I haven't heard that. That
I
is really helpful.
I
Yeah.
love that one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
And I have a buddy in
no.
New York who said that she really is sure she's going to be with her sister and her mom and all her friends who are already gone. And if it's not true, I don't care. I'll be dead.
Mhm. There it is. There it is. I I really liked breadcrumbs, and we're going to talk about that a little later. But since you brought up Marcus Aurelius and you wrote about the Stoics,
Mhm.
and I think there's so much power in thinking about that way of thinking, of
Absolutely.
taking things as they are,
And not
and seeing
wasting
obstacles as
energy.
yep.
Don't
Yes,
waste
go ahead.
energy on objecting.
Mm,
Something hits you, plot twist. Your reaction should be yes and make your move.
mhm.
If you sit there yelling no, why me, blah 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 blah, you're just wasting energy. It is what
Yes.
it is. It hit you. Let's go. What are you going to do now? Make your best move.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And it's
Or
what's
do the
interesting,
next right thing. I think that's Jung.
do the next right thing. Yes.
Mhm.
And when I think about the Stoics, as you were saying, take what comes to you. And there's this great book on the obstacles. The obstacle is the way, and and then thinking of Buddhist thinking and
Mhm.
philosophy, which I know
Mhm.
you've spent some time in.
Mhm.
There's some similar. I mean, I know they're different, but there's these similarities of
Oh yeah.
how do we accept what is? How do we go with what is presented to us? How do we not resist reality? Because resisting reality causes pain, internal pain,
Yeah.
external pain.
Huh?
What if we accept and move through?
Yeah, yeah. I'm doing pretty well with yes, and I'm not good at the part of it that's amor fati, love your fate. Sometimes I
Mm,
have to swear a little bit
mm,
before I say, "Okay, let's go." I'm not that quick on loving
mhm.
everything that comes at me.
Do you think so? Are those would be different? Accepting a fate, accepting a situation versus loving it. That you don't have to love it. You can accept without loving.
That's where I am.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I think loving it is really hard.
Hmm.
I mean, some really truly awful things happen to people, and they're not gonna love love them. No.
No.
Yeah.
Well, and that is when you talk about so the lifespan
Mhm.
and a theme in your work, your life, and particularly in your latest writings are about pivoting, right? About it's like you're never done. You can
Improv.
always yeah, right. And
Mhm.
when you talk about your partners, your life partners, where I'm going with this is one you have accepted and forgiven, and one I believe you have accepted the situation, but you didn't forgive, and that's okay.
Yeah, yeah. That was true. There are some things that you might need to forgive, but you don't have to forget,
Hmm.
because remembering, the experience can keep you from falling into the same trap again.
Hmm.
You have to learn
Hmm.
from it. Yeah.
Hmm. So that's
You know,
the key.
so many people when you say how old you are, people wanna know, how did what's your advice and how did you get there? And I just laugh because part of it's genes, which you have no control over. I mean, my dad looked like a movie star and lived to be 99.
Hmm.
Genes you can't do anything about. Luck, you're lucky or you're not. But attitude, oh man, you can control your attitude.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm. When
And
did you
if you accept that
yeah.
you're gonna be decrepit and helpless and everything just because 'cause you're old, it might happen that way.
Mhm.
Mhm.
When did you realize the power of attitude? How old were you on your journey, do you think?
Oh, geez, I was such a late bloomer. I
Hmm.
didn't start figuring anything out until I was 50.
Well, you
So,
didn't write your first novel till you were 80, so clearly, yeah, 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 yeah.
I was busy being a good girl and obeying the rules.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And look where that got you. Well, it got you to where it's all part of the story.
Yeah. One step after another. Mhm.
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 So I mean, that brings us to 50. Um, it's about at your 50th birthday is the first fundraiser for the Giraffe Heroes Project.
It
And
was.
how I'm curious as to what was going on in your life and then of the cultural life around you in New York that this became an idea on its way to something that you needed to do.
Yeah, I was freelance writers. I mean, English majors can make a living.
Mhm.
That thing about you have to get a paper hat with your degree, that's not true.
Oh.
There are places for English majors.
Mm.
So I was writing in New York freelance and doing whatever paid the rent. I had a boy in private school. I had to cover tuition, you know. So I am sitting at my typewriter doing a draft for international paper, selling cartons they were making for butchers.
Hmm.
And the key selling point was that the blood wouldn't leak out the bottom of the boxes.
That sounds
I was a
important.
vegetarian,
Oh. Hmm.
so I'm typing and gagging and reminding myself, yes, this will pay the rent. Keep going, keep going.
Mhm.
And the phone rang, and a friend of mine said, something's happening here at the magazine. It sounds like you. I think you should get down here. And I just got up and got on the subway and went downtown to Quest magazine. And they were launching something called the Giraffe Society. And it
Mm.
was to honor people who stick their necks out. I ran it until the magazine went bankrupt. And I was negotiating with the owner just to separate the society because
Mhm.
I figured I could run it without a magazine. And it was a mess. I finally broke into the locked offices of the magazine and stole the boxes that said giraffe.
Wow, okay. You
So
were compelled. You were compelled.
it
Yeah,
started with a theft.
with a crime. It
Yeah,
started with a crime.
yeah. And the super at the building was really sweet. And I talked my way in. He loaned me a dolly so I could stack the boxes up and get them out of there.
Oh, yeah, so this isn't Mission Impossible like I had in my mind. This is you're just being let in and you're being helped out with the stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't drop in with laser beams
Yeah.
or anything. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. No, the super
Okay.
was really sweet. And I finally got legal permission to send one message to the members. And I told them that we were shifting to being the Giraffe Project. And some of
Wow.
them came along. So that's how we started.
And it was a passion project, right? You still
Mhm,
had your day job, you still had your
mhm.
bills. And I know for so many, when we're thinking about what moves us, what calls us, um, if we're listening, whether it's convenient or not, what are we constantly thinking about? The ideal is that we actually get to for many, the ideal is that we get to do that ultimately for our life's work and then be
Yeah.
compensated for it so we can, right? So we're totally aligned and we are able to pay the bills and function.
Mhm.
Um, but for many, for most, it starts with this is what I do on the side and this is what I do to make money.
Yeah.
So how did that those paths come together?
Yeah. I had to keep both going for a while. I had a contract with AT&T and T, and that was covering basics. Uh, but I I started fundraising, and it was too crazy for foundations. I mean, they're very, very cautious, foundations are. So I realized, okay, I'm just going to have to get individuals who are crazy enough to help me do this. And the first one was one guy that somebody said, I know a crazy philanthropist. And I had a talk with him, and he said, okay, I'm going to give you $11,000. I'll give you 5 now and 6 when you do the first recording. And I said, no, give me 6 now and 5 later. I had become a fundraiser. And then he had a friend who was one of the backers of the Big Apple Circus. He's a venture capitalist, but he's putting money in the circus. So I thought I'd try him. We had bagels down at a Wall Street coffee shop, and he gave me $5,000. I mean, I just talked my way into people's pockets.
So what was the initial secret sauce of telling the stories, finding these people who are sticking their necks out
Mm-hmm.
and attracting people for good, right? To step into humanity instead of burying their heads.
Secret sauce. I think when you talk about it, people know that if we aren't involved in public life, people we may not be very pleased with will take over public life. We have to stand up. We have to be part of it. And Lord knows right now, boy, do we need people standing up, you know? So I think inherently we know that. We know we aren't consumers. We're citizens. We belong here. We have rights here. We have something to say. And we shouldn't let other people decide what's going to happen.
And the subtext of all of this is courage, right? The people, the giraffes, and I just more recently watched your TEDx talk, which was about 10 years ago. And yes, your speaking is eloquent. You were highlighting 10 people there, which is just 10 of the almost 2,000 over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And those stories, the amount of courage, I mean, all of these people are risking their physical and or psychological emotional lives in some way
Yeah.
by what they take on because
Mm-hmm.
of it's right and it's good and it's needed.
Mm-hmm.
It's contagious, right?
I
It's
hope so.
contagious. It seems to have been contagious, right? The something which was seen as, why are you doing this? Like, what's the point of this?
Mm-hmm.
We got serious stuff to talk about. Why are we talking about these people? And then this is before we had the internet and social media. This is back, right? Papers, articles,
Oh,
news clips, radio.
the first stories went out on LPs, 33s.
33s.
I recorded them onto 33s and packaged them for radio stations.
And they started playing them.
Yeah. A lot of the people, the on-air people were like moved to tears themselves because they were so sick of what they were having to put on the air. And they were thrilled to get something else.
Was there a moment when you realized this was, to use the Malcolm Gladwell tipping point idea, like, was there a moment when it tipped?
Whoa, that's a good question. I'd have to think about that. Let's circle back.
Okay, we will circle
Okay.
back. Because it just seems like there's been, steady awareness and reach. I mean, you guys expanded internationally.
Yeah.
Critical work in Russia, third
Mhm.
world countries. I mean, grassroots, which I know is the work that you and John have done for decades. This grassroots trying to change structures
Yeah.
through people,
Mhm.
through individuals, changing policy and structures through individuals.
Yeah, and John's been doing a lot on the continent. We've got 4 different nations on the African continent doing stories. And there, it's mostly radio because that's their main means of reaching out across the country. Mhm.
And it works.
And it
It
gets to
works.
people. Yeah. Yeah.
So the curriculum, so it started as you guys are identifying heroes, giraffe heroes, people sticking their necks out. And then 1991, the curriculum starts where you are taking young students through the Giraffe Hero Project curriculum so they learn to identify, to put stories out,
Mm-hmm.
and to make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a great pivot because it's very hard to get foundations to fund media. They're very timid about that. But they like school stuff. And we had
Mm-hmm.
teachers asking us all the time. They were telling us they're using the stories that they were getting personally from us in class. Why don't you do lesson plans for us? So John was at a meeting at a foundation, and the director said, "Oh, well, we're not doing that, but we're really interested in education programs." But the trustees meet Monday, and this was Friday. And John called me, and we did a proposal to create classroom materials from the giraffe stories and had it on the trustees' table board meeting that Monday.
Hmm.
And they did it. They gave us a grant. That was our first. And then we got the Ford Foundation, we got Kellogg Foundation. All the biggies came in on that one.
Mm-hmm.
And it cost a lot of money to
Mm-hmm.
create a K-12 curriculum. And
Mm-hmm.
we did it. It's like, yes.
And more than 250,000
Yeah.
students have gone through the curriculum.
Yeah. And it's now online, free, and we don't count anymore. I mean, just teachers are free to go onto the website, go to the teachers section, hit download, and they've got it. So,
Mm-hmm. At around the same time this was all starting, I want to ask you about your experience with Joseph Campbell and and how the impact of the holy fool, right? The idea of the holy fool and the field, right?
oh, wow.
So we're going to work our way into the field, but let's first start with Joseph Campbell and this idea of the holy fool and how that influenced you in stepping into this service.
And made Joe cry.
Hmm.
No,
You made him cry. You made Joe Campbell cry.
I did.
Hmm.
No, I was, he had retired, and he was speaking at Tarrytown a lot, and I ran the Tarrytown newsletter. So I knew him from that. And that's how I knew Chris Alexander, the architect, too, from their speaking at Tarrytown. Anyway, Joe was doing pop-up classes in New York. He couldn't stop teaching. He loved to teach. So the word would just go out, oh, Joe's at the Open Eye on Monday. Let's go. You know, and you just run over and listen to him talk, you know. And then John Graham was giving a talk at Esalen,
Mm-hmm.
and I drove him down from San Francisco, and I saw that Campbell was doing Parsifal for the weekend, the same weekend. So I stayed, you know, and just listening to Joe Campbell riff on Parsifal for 2 days was like mind blowing. Driving back up the coast to San Francisco, it just struck me that he had been talking about the Holy Fool, Parsifal, and that's why I couldn't stop doing this crazy giraffe thing. I was finding the modern day Holy Fools.
The
Back in New
ones,
York,
yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
I saw him. I said, I told him this story about what happened to me after the Parsifal stuff, and he did cry. He was just so moved that it was happening in real time now,
Mm-hmm.
that it wasn't just stories from mythology and other
Mm-hmm.
times. We were doing it now.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And the holy fool, those villagers, those people who were different. They didn't seem to respond to social conventions. They did things their own way. They were considered odd.
Mhm.
They're considered like outcasts or outsiders, and yet the magic of not being a part of the convention and listening to one's own inner stirrings
Mhm.
about what they believe and what is right.
I'm still looking for the slides he used that weekend because they were magnificent. They were all his private property.
Hmm.
And at the end of the weekend, he put up a deck of cards. I mean, just all the suits and the Joker. And he said, that's why so many religions ban card playing because of the Joker.
Hmm.
He's not a member of any of the suits. He's not in any of their ranking positions. He's just out there by himself, and you can't tell him what to do, and you can't control him. There he is, the holy fool. It's the Joker.
Hmm.
Isn't that lovely?
It's lovely. I had that's a great image. I think about our all of our conditioning and all of our programming and how I mean some people are blessed and cursed, whichever way you're looking at it,
Mhm.
by not having that stuff rub on them. But the majority of people, well, you can't not have that rub off on you. You're raised by parents who were raised a certain way in a culture, in a society, in a
Yeah.
time. Um, And I know as I've gotten older, I think a lot of what I do is try to question all the programming and try to go within and ask, what do I think? What do I want? What is separate than looking like you're doing the right thing or doing what you're supposed to be doing? I was always very
Mhm.
good at doing what I was supposed to be doing and
Are we
challenging that.
cousins? Are we
Yeah.
related?
At some
I
level,
always
yes. Yes.
I've decided I am unemployable.
I
Every time I've been involved in a
get that.
large group or institution, start saying, wait a minute, why are we doing that? What is
Hmm.
that about? What if?" And
It's not popular.
institutions don't like that. Mhm,
No.
mhm.
No, I had some, very poignant and hard lessons of those myself. And, actually with my young, at the time, naivete and idealism, I was completely perplexed for a while. I really
Mhm.
did not understand how asking questions and trying for that organization to do better and trying to be,
What's wrong with that?
innovative, right? Like, isn't this what we all want? And
Sure.
no,
No,
it's
it
not.
isn't.
It's not.
Yeah.
So, what are there 50 just seems I'm just picking that as a pivotal time in your life where lots of things happened. I think you and John got married right before then.
Mhm.
And you're starting this and you're ultimately moving out to the Pacific Northwest from New
Yeah,
York,
one of the prices
yeah,
of doing this work is you cannot live on Central Park West.
which might not be a bad thing.
It was kinda cool. It was a
Yeah.
lovely apartment.
Okay.
But I
It was a
couldn't afford
lot.
it. I
It was
couldn't
hard to
afford
let go. Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering, where did the holy fool in you, the one that's just saying, just screw this, screw them, like,
Mhm.
this is what I'm gonna do. Did that start to happen, as you say, in a late bloomer when you were about 50?
We got a directive at Macmillan in this skyscraper that no woman could work more than 40 hours a week or 8 hours a day. I had a labor negotiator at home, and I said, "Where's that in the state laws?" And I got the law, and it was all people
Mm,
doing hard physical work,
right.
and they were enumerated, they were named, and it only applied to those jobs. I made a copy of that, put it in the interoffice memo to the boss, and said, "What you're saying is illegal. You're saying no woman can run a project in this company because you know it takes more time than that. And here's the law."
Mm,
About 3 days later, the boss came out of the elevator and yelled, "Tell what's her name she can work as many goddamn hours as she wants."
Oh, it was starting back then. It was
Mhm.
starting back then. So I want to take us back to the field.
Oh, yeah.
And as we try to expand our reality, expand our possibilities, expand the idea of our humanness,
Hmm.
how would you, how do you describe the complexity of what is called the field?
Wow. That's been a big one for me because it there's so much knowledge in the world that has not been validated by Western science because our procedure requires proofs and, replication, and we have a process.
Hmm.
Um, so there's all sorts of things that the world knows, but that have not been scientifically verified. And I think a lot of them someday will be,
Hmm.
as in Radiolab just did an incredible piece on a lab technician actually seeing chi in a slide for the first time.
Hmm.
There are other cultures have known that chi exists and that it's what moves everything, but suddenly a Western scientist was looking at it. It's
Hmm.
just you gotta watch this. You gotta listen to that Radio Lab thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, uh, we haven't got a scientific explanation for gravity. We don't have one for consciousness. What if the panentheists are right and consciousness is what animates everything? That there is nothing that isn't formed by consciousness. That whole thing of there is no matter, there's only energy. What if the energy is consciousness? What if that's all there is?
Hmm.
I mean, I just find that absolutely fascinating. And quantum mechanics keeps getting us closer and closer to that. And I keep watching for them to have that revelation that maybe consciousness is everything.
So then, does that
That's
mean
the field.
is the yeah, that's the field.
Mhm, mhm.
That's the field.
And we're
You
in
talk
it
of
and of
yeah,
it, so is everything
yeah,
else.
right. And that the connectivity, which is talked about in quantum physics and quantum mechanics and in several religions, it's
Mhm.
all of the one in the connection, right? And a particle on this side of the world that's split apart on the other side of the world will start spinning the other way. Like
Uh-huh.
there's at the same time, there is connection. And why, Anne, do you think it is so hard for us humans to understand our connectedness and that the impact of one impacts the many?
Fear.
Mm.
Fear. You'd have to let go of your concept of who and what you are.
Mhm.
That's scary. You know? Saying that you're part of something, that you're not just me, this wonderful individual I have cultivated and educated and fed and housed all these years. It's scary as hell. So again, we're back to
Mhm.
courage. Mhm.
Courage. Mhm.
Living by the rules in a book requires no courage. Um, it's there's a way of living that says, just give me my marching orders. Okay, I'm here, ready to go. Whatever, just tell me what I'm supposed to do, and you can get that. There's lots of rule books. There's commandments. There's all sorts of uh, things human beings have
Mhm.
invented to say this is how it works. But
Mhm.
it's all human invention.
Mhm.
My one of the things in my own explorations is finding phi, the 1.618 ratio that keeps turning up in things that are beautiful.
Hmm.
it's the spiral, it's the vortex,
Hmm.
mathematically. And it has been found in DNA, it's found in galaxies, and it's like another one. I have this evidence project going in my head. That sounds like evidence to me that there is order, and
Hmm.
we didn't put it there. Some of us have found it. The quantum mechanics people are finding stuff, but we didn't put it there.
Hmm.
So it tells me there is evidence of order. Chris,
Hmm.
the architect's work that
Yep.
I worked with, he wrote 4 volumes of illustrated discussion of this idea of when something is beautiful, you are tapping into an order that exists. It's not just your ego or whatever technology you have at your fingertips that you might create something out of. You've tapped
Hmm.
in. If you
Yeah.
really hit it and it's beautiful, you're a channel
Hmm.
and you're bringing in
Yeah.
the order that exists,
In
just
the
tapping
field. In the field, right? Again, like it's order in the field. To me, and all of the avid Star Wars fans out there, we're also talking about the Force.
it. Oh,
And
yeah.
I say that, slightly tongue in cheek and slightly not,
No,
because
it's real.
it's real, right? The
Mhm,
Force is real, whatever we wanna call it, and we know through lots of different scientific and non-scientific approaches, things happen,
mhm,
and they are seemingly unexplainable, but they're also not unexplainable. Like, there it's and this is where perhaps faith comes in as well, when we have to think about, there's this thing that I can tap into, that
mhm.
I know that exists, and even if I can't read a research peer-reviewed paper that makes sense to me about what it is, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
It is an as yet unscientifically proved reality.
Mhm. Mhm.
As yet.
Mhm.
I think most of these things will be.
Mhm.
Mm. And in
And
the meantime, we make up
yeah,
great stories.
we do make up great stories, don't we?
Mm,
About why things happen or why things don't
yeah,
happen.
yeah.
I have found
It's a
yeah.
big guy in the sky who looks like your granddad, and he's just manipulating everything. Yeah. Mhm,
Mhm. Mhm. I As I've gotten older and done my own work and exploration in all of these alternative, is that alternative? An alternative way of thinking,
mhm,
um, holistic, spiritual, whatever the words are.
yeah.
I find it brings me excitement and hope and
Mhm,
wonder to know that there is more. And this is where possibility comes in for me. This whole idea of having endless possibilities and not seeing us as limited. And now I guess I'm going back to also and connected. Like all
mhm,
of this connects so many things.
mhm. Are you reading Ian McGilchrist?
No.
He's a Brit. He's written fabulous stuff about our out of balance ways of dealing with the world.
I'm
That
writing it
we are
down. Hmm.
so focused on dissection, analytic stuff, and the quantifiable, and so
Hmm.
missing on the instinctual, the sensory, and we need to use both of them
Hmm.
to deal with the world. And we're just out of sync. And he's just written beautiful stuff about it. Mhm.
We'll definitely check that out. And as as you have gone through life, does more and more do more and more things seem connected?
Oh, yes, absolutely, absolutely. Uh, and I there's a phrase somebody came up with of the tyranny of the quantifiable. Because
Hmm.
that. analytical approach to the world demands numbers. Can it go to scale? And what are your quantifiable results? I have none. I have no idea what the effect of my work is. Every once in a while, I'll get something anecdotal. I mean, I get people telling me I've had an effect on them, but how do I weigh that? How do I make numbers on that? I can't. There are too many valuable things that can't be enumerated. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do them.
No. It makes me think of flow, which is another term we can apply to some of what you have been talking about when you're tapping in,
Yeah,
and what you access is something that is beautifully already there, or something that
yeah.
has already is accessible.
And you can bring it into being again.
Yes.
Mhm.
I I know for me it's the more that so those moments are magical. And the key for those that have ever been in flow, and I know when I was a competitive tennis player, and being in the flow state was always what we sought. And
Yeah.
the trick of the flow state, and that's when everything slows down and you see where everything is unfolding and everything goes where it's supposed to.
Aha.
The challenge of the flow state is once you cognitively identify I am in flow, just as quickly you are out of flow, right?
You
It's this,
killed it.
you killed it. So I think it's this trick of acknowledging when we are in sync, when we
Mm,
are, um, we feel alignment, when we
mm,
feel cohesion,
mm.
and this letting it go. Don't overthink it, because we overthink. We overthink so much. We need an explanation
Analyzing,
for why we
analyzing.
analyze, and so would you say, what would you say about this idea of staying in what I'm calling flow and trusting it, because there's a reason that you
It's
have tapped
courage
in?
again, because you're
Mm,
sort of letting go of your perimeters, your edges, your uniqueness, your you-ness. You have to let go
mhm.
and be part of that bigger thing. That's scary.
Yeah.
Mhm. So again,
Yes.
we're back to
Yes.
courage.
Courage. We're back to courage, and this brings me to one of your many pieces of wisdom in breadcrumbs. And everyone, breadcrumbs is on Ann's. She'll tell us about her website, but right now it's on her website that you can access and get these pieces of wisdom. And so you said, as it relates to what we're talking about, brace yourself. Being alive is a risk. Seeking security nails most people into coffins while they're still alive. It's better to laugh on the tightrope than to cower on the platform, demanding a net before you'll step onto the rope. Security is the womb, and if you're very lucky, it's also our parents' arms. Out here on our own, we're all at risk all the time.
Mhm, mhm.
That takes courage.
Is that scary or what?
Yeah. It takes courage, because what we do most of the time is we create. I mean, and I know you hit some stuff about Freud too, of where he got it right and where he got it wrong. When I
Mhm.
think of some of the Freudian stuff, he says, basically everything that we do and create is to ward off our fear of death, our fear of
Exactly.
not existing. Like, we create all of this stuff to feel secure when in fact we are not.
And you never will be. You
No.
can't be.
No.
Just accept it, dance with it.
Dance with it. Go to the edge, right?
Mhm,
Go to
mhm,
the edge.
mhm. I don't know if you well, you did say it, I'm sure, but right now I'm thinking a lot about transactional behavior because you're
Mhm.
seeing so much of it in public life. What
Yep.
do you give me if I do that?
Mhm.
And I really object to that and have said that the golden rule is transactional. It's not good enough.
Yes.
You
The
don't
platinum rule.
do you
You're
don't
arguing for
do
the
what you
platinum rule.
do in order to
Yeah,
prevent someone from hurting you or getting them to do something good for you.
right.
You do it because it's the next right thing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So the platinum rule. So
Yeah.
you are arguing for the platinum rule. Tell everyone what the platinum rule
Okay.
is.
I forget the exact words. It's something like, "Do whatever you can with whatever you have." Yeah, what is it? Have you got it there?
Yeah, I do have it right here, and I'm trying to find where it went. I had it right at the top. Um, where's my platinum rule? Basically, okay, I can't find it on my notes, but what I'll do, I'll paraphrase it. Is basically it made me think of something that I always try to do and tell my kids, which is do what is right, do what is best
Yeah.
for people.
Yeah.
Like it's care for your fellow humans. That's what it was. It
Yeah.
was care, do what is best to care for your fellow humans.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think John Wesley came as close as anybody ever has in saying something like, "Do what you can with whatever you've got wherever you are."
Yep.
That was
Yep.
a good one. And it doesn't say in order to get something for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yep. Yes.
And we've got too much of that transactional bargaining going on these days.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Well, your number eight wisdom, number eight is balancing kindness, forgiveness, and justice can be gnarly. And I love the picture you have on your wall, which is probably in your office back there. It says, "Some blessings wear a hell of a
Oh, yeah,
disguise."
it's right there on the
Yep,
wall.
yep.
Mhm,
Some blessings wear a hell of a disguise. And this goes back to what we were talking about with the Stoics and with Buddhism of accepting what is.
mhm.
And there's so many stories, there's so many wonderful parables about this. It's like maybe yes, maybe no, good, maybe bad, maybe.
Yeah, the
And
old
and
story about the guy whose son's leg was broken.
exactly,
Yes, he couldn't
exactly.
work the farm, but then the army recruiters couldn't take him. Well,
Uh-huh. So if we can embrace, if we can go through life and without it needing to be the way we think it needs to be, which for many of us perfectionists or recovering perfectionists, as I, um,
and
we got to get rid of that stuff and
and the
kind of
judging.
take what comes.
The
Yeah.
judging, being so sure you know whether it's good or bad.
Hmm.
Just say yes and keep moving. Mhm.
Say yes and keep moving. You end your memoirish breadcrumbs with this. I close this hoping you'll move wisely and often joyfully through the dark forest, tracking these breadcrumbs, or not. Whatever comes to pass, here's to you, kid. May you connect seamlessly and often with the field as you make the path of your one wild and precious life here, now, and in all the places and the days ahead of you.
That's my blessing. Mhm.
That's a beautiful blessing.
I have 10 grandchildren and 6 great grandchildren.
Mm,
So, sort of tongue in cheek, it's to them, but it's really for anybody who wants to eavesdrop.
hmm.
Mhm.
Well, I did. I am, and I'm taking that, and so are our listeners.
I like it.
What can you what can you leave us with to inspire us to do the hard things which are part of our humanness? When I say the hard things, I mean like that are to step out of what we are programmed to do, what we think we need to do to actualize and become what we possibly can become.
Wow. Ah, there's lots of don'ts. Stop saying no, stop arguing with fate. I think amor fati was the smartest thing anybody ever said. Love your fate. And if you can't love it, at least accept it,
Hmm.
then move to young, do the next right thing.
Do the
Mhm.
next right thing.
Mm.
And as you have shown us in your life, there's many more next right things to do. There's many
Mhm.
more pivots possible,
Mhm.
and you don't need to stop until you have that moment of lapse, which takes us to wherever else we might go.
That one moment you're gonna lose.
That one moment. And thank you for sharing all of your experiences and wisdom. And I had just so much fun and benefited so much from learning about you and your work. And I am leaving with lots and lots to
This was fun. Thank you.
think. Tell everyone your website where they can find all your books and all the stuff that you're still doing.
Yeah, it's just annmedlock.com. No E on the Ann. It's a plain Ann, not a fancy Ann.
Plain Ann.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when everyone gets to look at you as I am, they know that you are not plain Ann. You are far from plain Ann. Thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks for being a part of our community, for your 5-star reviews, for subscribing. Please share this with all those you know will benefit. Look forward to doing this again soon. And you know how I'm going to leave you. We've got this moment, this day, and this life. Let's make it a great one. This has been a Peters and Rossi production. Make It a Great One with Dr. Dan is produced by Laura Rossi. Our engineer is Phil Rossi. Theme music is Uplifting Folk by Awesome Music. Artwork by Kelly Dwyer. Follow us on social media at Dr. Dan Peters. For more information, visit drdanpeters.com.